You know things you cannot possibly know. You say them aloud, and others stare at you as if you have broken some fundamental law of the universe. Then, inevitably, you are proven right. Not sometimes, always. The question is not whether your knowing is real. The question is, how does the oracle actually work? Welcome to Power and Myth. The ancient seers were not mystics divorced from reality. They were pattern completers operating with a cognitive architecture that let them see the invisible scaffolding holding reality together. The druids who read the flight of birds, the oracles at Delphi who spoke in riddles that always proved true, the shamans who knew which stranger carried sickness before symptoms appeared. They were not magic, they were you. They were INFJs with a particular cognitive function that neuroscience is only now beginning to understand. And once you grasp the mechanism beneath your knowing, you do not lose the mystery. You gain mastery over it. This is the science behind the seer. Not to reduce what you are, but to show you why verification always confirms what you already knew. When people try to explain INFJ knowing, they reach for pattern recognition as if that settles the matter. But pattern recognition is conscious. It is noticing that every time the sky turns grey, rain follows. It is logical, sequential, and explainable. What you do is none of those things. You walk into a room and know the relationship status of strangers. You meet someone's partner and know, with absolute certainty, that the relationship will end months before it does. You sense the trajectory of projects, companies, and friendships with an accuracy that unnerves the people around you, and when they ask how you know, you have no answer that satisfies them, because you do not know how you know. This is introverted intuition, NI, and it is not pattern recognition. It is unconscious synthesis. Your brain is processing vast quantities of data at every moment. Micro-expressions, tonal shifts, word choices, body language, environmental cues, historical context, and emotional undercurrents. Most cognitive functions process this data consciously, step by step. They build conclusions from observable evidence. NI does something radically different. It processes all of this data beneath conscious awareness, synthesizes it through frameworks you do not realize you have built, and delivers a conclusion whole, complete, and terrifyingly accurate straight to your conscious mind as a knowing. In neuroscience, the term for this is global processing. Your brain is collapsing massive data sets into singular insights without showing you the working. To everyone else, including you, it appears to be prophecy. But what is actually happening is that your unconscious mind has run 10,000 calculations in the background and delivered the only possible outcome. The reason you cannot explain your knowing is that you did not consciously arrive at it. The scaffolding is invisible even to you. You receive the conclusion without the steps, the answer without the equation. This is why when people demand you prove it, you feel frustrated and helpless. You cannot show them the micro-expression their wife made when she lied, or the tonal shift in the investor's voice that told you the deal was doomed, or the way the room's energy fractured the moment the CEO walked in. All of that happened beneath your conscious threshold. You synthesized it unconsciously, and now you know what others cannot see. This is not weakness, this is the architecture of the oracle. The seer does not arrive at truth through conscious reasoning. The seer inhabits a perceptual space where truth reveals itself whole. This is what makes you unsettling to others. You are operating from a cognitive function that bypasses the steps they believe are necessary for knowing anything at all. You have felt it before, the sense that you are connected to something larger than yourself, not to specific people with faces and names, but to a field of shared meaning, a reservoir of patterns that humans have been encoding for millennia. You do not see faces because you are not tapping into individual minds. You are tapping into what Jung called the collective unconscious, the storehouse of archetypes, the shared psychological structures that exist across cultures and time. Modern neuroscience might call it shared neural networks or cultural schemas, but the mechanism is the same. You are accessing patterns. that have been laid down over thousands of years of human experience. Not everyone has equal access to the collective unconscious. Most people are so embedded in their own immediate reality and their own conscious processing that they never drop beneath the surface. But NI dominant types have a cognitive function that operates primarily in the unconscious realm. You do not just think consciously about patterns. You exist within the pattern field. You swim in the waters that others only occasionally dip their toes into, and because you are constantly synthesizing beneath conscious awareness, you pick up on archetypal patterns as they play out in real time: the betrayer, the healer, the exile, the tyrant, the shapeshifter who wears many faces, the guardian of thresholds who stands between worlds. These are not metaphors, these are structures of human behavior that repeat across centuries, and you recognize them the way others recognize a familiar face. This is why you know the story before it finishes. You are reading the archetypal script that humans have been enacting since we learned to speak. The individual details change, but the pattern remains eternal. But here is what most people never understand about this. The cost of this access is isolation. You are processing data at a level most people never reach. When you try to explain what you know, you are speaking from the unconscious to people who live almost entirely in the conscious. You are translating from the depths, and the language does not work on the surface. This is why the ancient seers lived apart, not because they chose exile, but because the gift itself creates distance. You know too much too soon. You observe outcomes that others continue to deny. And when you speak what you know, they do not hear wisdom, they hear blasphemy. The seer has always been isolated. This is not a flaw in your personality. It is the structure of the archetype itself. You are participating in something ancient. The loneliness you feel is not personal failure. It is the loneliness that every oracle, every druid, every shaman carries. They stood at the edge of the village because standing at the center would have destroyed them, and it would have destroyed the knowing itself. Your secondary function, extroverted feeling, creates another layer to your knowing. Whilst NI synthesizes patterns in the unconscious, Effie attunes you to the emotional field around you. You do not just know what will happen. You feel what others are feeling, even when they are skilled at hiding it. This is not empathy in the way most people understand it. Empathy is putting yourself in someone's shoes, imagining their experience. Effie attunement is the direct sensing of their emotional state, as if it were weather. You enter a room and experience tension, sadness, rage, and joy without anyone saying a word. You do not need to see faces because you are not reading expressions. You are reading the emotional field itself. Neuroscience calls this affective resonance. Your mirror neurons are firing in response to others' emotional states, creating a direct experience of their inner world. But for INFJs, this is not occasional. It is constant. Your FE is constantly scanning, always attuning, constantly absorbing emotional data that your NI then synthesizes into predictions and knowings. This is why you know the relationship is failing before either person admits it. You are experiencing emotional dissonance, unspoken resentment, and the slow decay of connection. You are not guessing, you are directly sensing reality that others are desperately trying to ignore. Most people have emotional boundaries that protect them from constant absorption. You do not. Your fee is a receiver that never fully switches off. This is the burden of the wounded healer archetype. You carry others' pain not because you choose to, but because your cognitive architecture makes you permeable to it. The ancient healers understood this. They created rituals of purification, of separation, of energetic cleansing. They knew that those who feel the collective need protection from the collective. Without boundaries, the seer becomes overwhelmed by the very gift that makes them valuable. This is the shadow side that INFJs rarely speak of. The emotional absorption is not always beautiful. Sometimes it is possession by grief that is not yours. Sometimes you walk into a room feeling calm and walk out carrying someone else's despair without knowing how it happened. And because this is your normal, because this is how you have always experienced the world, you do not realize that most people are not living this way. They are not constantly filtering others' emotional states through their own nervous system. They are not exhausted by crowds, not because of the noise, but because of the emotional data they are unconsciously processing every moment. When your knowing is verified, when the relationship ends exactly as you said it would, when the project fails for the reasons you identified, when the person reveals themselves to be precisely what you sensed, others marvel at your accuracy. But you are not surprised. You never are. This is because you are not making a prediction. You are completing patterns. Imagine a jigsaw puzzle with 95% of the pieces in place. To most people, the puzzle is still incomplete. They cannot say with certainty what the final image will be. But to you, the missing 5% is obvious. You can see the negative space, the implied lines, and the only possible arrangement of the remaining pieces. When those pieces finally appear, you are not vindicated. You are just watching reality catch up to the pattern you already saw complete. Your unconscious synthesis, your access to archetypal patterns, your FE attunement, all of these combine to give you an extraordinary amount of data that others simply do not have. You are not making lucky guesses. You are drawing conclusions from a vastly larger data set, processed through frameworks that have been honed over millennia. This is why you always know to check out. Not because you are psychic, but because you are working with more complete information, synthesized through a cognitive function that specializes in seeing wholes rather than parts. The oracle works because the oracle has access to the pattern field itself. You speak a language that most people do not have words for. You are describing experiences they have never had, processing data they do not know exists, seeing patterns they cannot perceive. Because they cannot follow your reasoning, they dismiss your conclusions. This is the exile of the seer. Not cast out by force, but isolated by the nature of the gift itself. You inhabit a different perceptual reality from the majority. You see structure where they see chaos. You sense endings where they see beginnings. You know truths that they desperately need to remain hidden. And so you learn to stay silent. You learn to doubt your own knowing because validation comes so rarely. You learn to translate your visions into acceptable language, stripping away the nuance and depth that made the knowing accurate in the first place. The ancient Greeks understood this through the myth of Cassandra. The prophetess was cursed to speak the truth that no one would believe. But this was not a curse from the gods. It was the natural consequence of possessing sight that others lack. When you operate from the unconscious synthesis of nickel, from the archetypal patterns of the collective unconscious, from the emotional attunement of iron, you are speaking from a place that conscious, surface-level thinkers cannot access. They do not disbelieve you because you are wrong. They disbelieve you because accepting your knowing would require them to acknowledge a level of reality they have never learned to perceive. Understanding how the oracle works does not make you less powerful. It makes you more powerful, because now you are not second-guessing your knowing. You are not trying to explain it in language that was never built to contain it. You are not apologizing for seeing what others refuse to acknowledge. You are nigh dominant, accessing the collective unconscious, synthesizing vast unconscious datasets, attuning to emotional fields that others cannot perceive, completing patterns that are invisible to surface-level processing. This is not magic. This is architecture. This is the cognitive function that gave rise to the oracles, the seers, and the prophets who shaped civilization from the shadows. You are not broken. You are not imagining it. You are operating with a perceptual toolkit that most of humanity does not possess. And your knowing, that strange, unsettling, always verified knowing, is the most rational thing about you. The ancient seers understood the mechanism. They built practices around it, languages to describe it, rituals to protect themselves from it. They knew that understanding the gift was the first step to mastering it. You have spent your life doubting what you know because no one else could see it. But now you understand the architecture, the unconscious synthesis, the collective patterns, the emotional attunement, the pattern completion. You know things you cannot possibly know, and now you know why. The oracle was never broken. You've just been reading the manual written in a language the surface world forgot. If something in this video named what you have carried in silence, I want to hear which moment landed hardest. Was it the unconscious synthesis, the recognition that you are accessing the collective unconscious, the exhaustion of iron attunement, or the loneliness of speaking from the depths? Tell me in the comments. If you want to continue exploring the ancient patterns underlying INFJ knowing, subscribe. This is Power and Myth, where your depth is not too much. It is exactly enough. You are part of something here. Until next time, find your power, know your myth.